What is going on, everybody? I am back today to do something a little bit different than I normally do, but I thought that this would be a really fun video to make. So recently, I've obviously been doing a lot of album reviews, and I've had a lot of fun talking about albums that I love and recommending music to you, and I talked about it in the very first video that I did. But sometimes, when you set your mind on doing one thing, it's hard to incorporate elements of your personality into it. And I love movies, and movies are always at the forefront of my mind, but I have a lot of other interests. And sometimes when you have a platform like this, it's hard to find ways to kind of naturally fit it into the discussions. And last year, if you noticed, I did a lot where I was reading a book and then talking about the movie adaptation of the book with the book. And I find that to be such a fun thing to do. I really love watching film adaptations of books because I love reading. I'm a big fan of reading. Last year, I think I read like 75, 76 books. I really enjoy literature and I spend a lot of time with books, but I'm not necessarily the most educated person to talk about all the nuances in writing a book, or maybe like grammatical errors or things of that nature. Like, I might not necessarily be the most educated person on that, but I do love reading. And so what I thought would be fun today, just to do something a little bit different in this one-time type of video, is to talk about some of my favorite current working authors that I have read multiple books from, authors that I think are worth your time checking out, and authors in a multitude of different genres. And I'm excited to discuss some of them with you today, and I'm hopefully going to recommend you something that you'll be able to read and enjoy. So the first author I'm going to talk about, one of my favorite working authors right now, is an author by the name of Christopher Triana, and he works in writing horror novels. And what I love about Chris's work is his books are incredibly brutal and they're unforgiving in a way that sometimes really catches you off guard. He will write things that I'm kind of incapable of thinking could even be possible in a book, like just really disturb you to the core. But the thing I love the most about Christopher's writing style is that he examines the darker side of human psychology in a way that I think a lot of artists are afraid to. Also, in a way that I think push and pulls you as a reader to feel for characters that can be horrible and have moments of empathy towards really awful people, but then immediately ground you to remind you that they're terrible people. And it takes a really talented author to be able to push and pull you emotionally in a way that would make you feel that way for someone who is just so downright awful. And I've read a lot of books in Christopher Triana's catalog. My favorite book in his catalog so far is the book Gone to See the Riverman, which, if this gives you an idea as to Christopher Triana's catalog, it is about a woman who sends letters to a serial killer, and he writes back to her constantly, and she decides one day to go visit him in jail, and he tells her that there is something at his house that he wants her to go find. And so she ends up going to travel there with her disabled sister. Two of them make this trip to go see what this serial killer has left behind for her. It becomes a paranormal, very fantastical book towards the third act, but there are also some incredibly twisted, grounded moments in it that will leave your jaw on the floor and honestly probably disgust you. And that's what I like about Chris, is that he's really able to kind of dive in and make you feel sick. And that's what I love so much about his work. I recently read the sequel that he wrote to this. I've read the book Toxic Love, Full Brutal, The Houses That October Built, They All Died Screaming. I've read a lot of books in Christopher Triana's catalog, but the thing about his books are they are always compelling. They are always super well written, very thought-provoking, but they will make you feel ill. And that is one of the things that I really love about his work. And he is an author that I will continue to support every type of book that he puts out. And he just writes phenomenal works of fiction that are definitely worth your time. Up next is another one of my favorite recent authors, and that is Frederick Bachmann. And Frederick Bachmann has written a ton of books, and I've read 5 of his books books thus far, and every book that I've read from him has been remarkable. He is really well known for his series Beartown, which is a series of 3 books about this small hockey town. A lot of people know him from the book he wrote called A Man Called Uva, which recently was adapted into an American film called A Man Called Otto, where Tom Hanks was the lead character. And he's written, the thing I love about Bachmann's writing is he writes these very personal character stories that are incredibly empathetic and beautiful. I recently read the book that he wrote, My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, which was just an incredible story about this young 7-year-old girl who has this really close relationship with her grandmother. Her grandmother is this really absurd, quirky human being. And you get introduced to all these characters that live in the housing development that they live in, and they all have such fleshed out personalities, and each character gets a story to where none of the characters feel that are introduced feel like they're underexplained or feel like that they don't get enough time to evolve and grow. And the thing I love the most about Bachmann's writing is how deeply empathetic of an author that he is. I feel like he explores the human condition in a way that virtually everyone can understand. And what I love about it is he'll dive into some really complex subject matter, like in Beartown. The overall crux of that book and what kind of sets off the entire scope of events of the 3-volume series is a very brutal and unforgiving and horrifying thing that happens to a young girl in that town, and how the town is shaped by this sport, and how people are so willing to kind of overlook these horrible things because of a sport that these kids play. And they show the beauty in the sport, but also all the negative sides affiliated with it. And I think there's just a delicate balance as an author that you'd have to tread by telling those types of stories. And Bachmann just does it in a very seamless way that is incredibly impressive. And in My Grandmother and in A Man Called Uva, but the lead characters are, some of the main characters are both like crotchety old people that like live their lives in a very specific way, but they're not just boiled down to one simple thing. There's layers to their characters. There's things to understand about them to see why they got to this specific point in their life. And Bachmann is just incredible at that. And I love him as an author. He's someone who I'm really looking forward to reading more of his books. And he's someone that if you're into really beautiful human stories, I would highly recommend checking out his work. Up next is Riley Sager. Riley Sager is a horror, suspense, thriller, more in like the suspense thriller. Some of his books have horror elements, but he is one of my favorite authors when it comes to telling a compelling story that from the first 5 to 6 pages, you are immediately engrossed in the world and you just want to know what's going to happen next. And I have actually read every book that Riley Sager has published, and he just gets better through his career. I feel like I think he's released maybe 7 books, somewhere in that realm, and there was only one that I thought was not as strong as the remainder of his works. But what I really love about his books is he always writes really compelling lead characters, and he always does a really great job at kind of throwing you off as to what you think is going to happen in the book, and immediately kind of like shifting you in this entirely different direction. And I love books that have really great plot twists, and his books have incredible plot twists. And he's just got this catalog of incredible work that he's got a new book coming out this year, and I'm really excited to check it out. But his stuff just really, it's like those things where you'll read one of his books and it might be 250, 300 pages, and you just cannot put it down because it's just that good. And he's someone I really always look forward to whatever he's going to put out next. And if you're into suspense thrillers or books with a lot of twists and turns, he's definitely worth checking out. Another artist who is in a very similar vein to Riley Sager is Alice Feni, who also writes really incredible suspense mystery thriller books. I've read 3 of Alice Feni's books so far, and all 3 have been really amazing character studies that are also just filled with twists and turns that you cannot imagine. What I love is the way that she reveals information. I recently read the book Rock, Paper, Scissors and also His and Hers. And both books, like every 3 or 4 chapters, there's a new piece of information conveyed to you as the reader that completely shifts your perspective on the entire story. And when an author can get in your head and make you think a specific way and then immediately shift your perspective and do something entirely different, that's really impressive to me. And I love the way Alice Feni creates these worlds, and her books get very suspenseful and often very dark in a way that I can really appreciate. And she has a pretty decently long catalog. There's a couple of her books that I have not read thus far that I'm really looking forward to visiting and reading. But the 3 books of hers that I have read so far, I have really enjoyed, and I've thought they've been very immersive and really well done. And I'm looking forward to checking out more of her work. And for today, I'll give you one more author that I really enjoy reading, and that is TJ Cloon. TJ Cloon, I've read 3 of his books, and I have loved all 3 of the books that I have read from him. He often writes about very fantastical worlds. His characters, most of the time, are queer, the lead characters are. And what I love is the way that he incorporates these queer stories into these fantastical worlds in a way that the payoffs are always incredibly emotional. Similar to what I said about Bachmann, where Bachmann's stories are very straightforward and very real life, where TJ Kloon's stories are incredibly fantastical. He has this very empathetic way of seeing human beings and just really loving people and showing people at their most deepest flawed moments, but also showing them at the moments that they thrive. And I think there's something really impressive about an author who's able to kind of explore a wide array of emotion. And it's just, he's written 3 amazing books. The ones I've read from him are Under the Whispering Door, The House of the Cerulean Sea, and In the Lives of Puppets. And all 3 of them have been really immersive and wonderful stories that I have loved a lot and that I would recommend to virtually anyone to check out. I feel like his books are incredibly accessible. They're really easy breezy to read, and they'll make you cry, and they'll also put a smile on your face. And I love his work, and I always really look forward to reading whatever he's putting out next. So those are just some of my favorite authors to read right now. What are some of your favorite authors? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you'd like me to make a second part talking about more authors that I absolutely love. I read a lot of books. Like I said, I read like 75 books last year. I love to read, and I'm always looking for new authors to add into my rotation. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.